Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and we do watercolor tutorials, and we usually do them every week, but once in a while we just like to throw an extra one at ya.
Bonus!
So that's what today is. We're doing the skull for Halloween. You might think that I might have dressed in costume today to support Halloween. No. This isn't a costume. I didn't forget cat ears.
That's not the case.
It's just an online, it was one of those things where you're like, that seems like a good idea, and you buy something online, and then you get it, and you're like, that's a lot of animal print. But it's fine. So, we have the skull. Now, before I get into colors and steps, I would just like to say this project is actually a little bit more advanced. If you are a beginner and you just want to like go for it and see if you can do it, more power to you. Do not be angry at yourself if it doesn't turn out, because if I'm being honest, I have steps outlined for this, but I'm going to be jumping around the entire thing because this painting is all about values and how those values relate to each other. And so it's like it informs as it goes, and so I'm going to be jumping around a lot, so it might be hard to follow. I will try my best, but just know that like this also is going to be a good like test to see if I can do portraits, because portraits are the same. I know a lot of you have been asking to do tutorials on how to do portraits. Those are really difficult, and a lot of it is because value and skin tone. And so like this is a more difficult project. I'm going to see how it goes over, and we're just going to give it a try. So basically be nice to me and be nice to yourselves. That's what I'm saying.
Be prepared for a difficult task.
Yeah, this is a little bit harder,
Not
but
for the faint of heart.
Not for the faint of heart, this skull. Okay, so we are using 3 colors. They're Dr. P.H. Martin brand, which are liquid watercolors, which are dye-based. We have black, and we have slate blue.
It'd be really funny because they all look the same color on the palette. Just like we have black, we have black, and we have black.
And we have other black.
Other black. Ivory black.
And we have antelope. That's like with other paint brands. I can't remember which ones, and I probably shouldn't say even if I remember, but there was like lamp black and ivory black and like a third black.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, somebody asked me, they're like, what are the differences? And I'm like, I truly don't know, and I'm sorry. I'm sure one is better for mixing and one isn't better for mixing.
Maybe.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I don't know anything.
Somebody who is more knowledgeable will comment and tell me why, and for you, I appreciate you.
Yes.
Okay. We have an outline with this project. I did my best, but as you can see, there's a lot of marks on this. So please have the reference photo handy that you can refer to as we're painting, because you might get lost a little bit in all the different marks. You can download this printable of our outline for free on our website, letsmakeart.com. Just find the skull project and our steps. So the very first thing I'm going to do is the background. The second step, I'm going to put in the darker values on the skulls. So that's going to be like the eye sockets, the nose sockets, and the jaw sockets. 3, I'm going to start doing the medium values. 4, I'm going to do the teeth. 5, I'm going to do light values. Again, I am warning you, I will be jumping around a lot, probably in between these steps. So I'm giving you fair warning. Okay?
That's fair.
Okay. But the very first step I know, because that is what I started with. We're doing the background. So to do the background, and I just want to be clear that what I did here is I have 3 colors. I only used black for the background, and then I used a mixture of those 3 colors for inside of the skull, and that is because I did not want the colors to be the same. I wanted the skull to stand out from the background, especially because if you look, there's a super dark value on this jawline right here, and I put brown in there because if I used only black, it would have mixed in with our background. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's why I was very specific with only using black for my background, and then even with my dark values within my skull, I mix brown or blue in there to give it different colors so it does stand apart from the background. Okay? So for my background, I'm just going to add water along the edge. So I'm using a round 6 and a round 2. Right now I'm using my round 6. And I'm just going to wet the area. And right next to the head, this part is where I'm going to drop black. And it's just going to bleed out into the water. And that's what we want. It's just going to kind of move on its own. So I go almost to the chin. I stop a little bit before the chin. I'm dropping in this black. And then if you want to help it move, like I'll just take a kind of damp brush and kind of just transition that out a little bit. You can choose and you can decide how far out you want this to go. Maybe if you want to get some interesting lines, you can even pick up your paper. That's going to move it all down. You can just see how that color moves across the paper. And I'm going to do the same thing around the top. So just using water. Then I'm going to grab black.
Have you ever seen Fantastic Four?
Is there more than one?
Yes.
I feel like I've seen the first
Chris
one.
Evans, Jessica Alba.
Yes.
Okay. Not that one.
Okay, then no, I have not seen it.
The most recent one isn't, none of them are really that great, but
Okay.
I just love those superheroes. They're like my favorites. One of my favorite quad teams.
Okay.
But the villain in that, his name is Dr. Doom. And this outline looks like him in the most recent one.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Ooh, look at how that black is spreading.
Oh, I know.
You're like, oh, I see it. I see you, black.
I've got it on the zoom in. Kind of looks like he has hair.
We just do like a black mohawk.
What if you had an outline of a skull, but then you just did like a bear? Just completely different. it's not even the
We
same.
told you it's going to be complicated. Try and keep up. Oh, I forgot to say the paint equivalents if you're using another brand. Essentially, you just need black, brown, and like a darker blue. But if you have dandelion paint, you need space blue, sepia, and black. Sorry for whoever's editing that. You can just leave it where that is. It's fine.
It'd be like an asterisk after the three splotches.
So I'm not going to connect the background all the way to the other side. I'm just going to have it kind of fade off over here. That was my choice. If you want it to connect, you can. You can, because it's your painting. That's all. That's all I'm going to say about that. And then you can decide how far you kind of want this to move. The reason why I put water down and then black is because, one, that's wet on wet technique and super cool. But also because I've noticed that with black, if you put the water down first and then the black in the water, it stays darker than if I were to put black down simultaneously with a wet brush. So I wanted that around the skull to be super dark. And so I did my water first, dropped the black in there, and it should stay fairly black as it dries. Okay, so that is step one. And now we're gonna move on to step two. We're gonna do like the darker values. Now, I just wanna point out a couple of things before we get started, especially around the nose and the eyes. So because the skull is angled and it has form, even though the eye sockets are here, you can see, like, I have this outlined here. This is still bone, but it's inside the socket. So it's shadowed. It's like how at the top here, you're gonna be able to see the back of the socket. So it's a darker value because it's still in the socket, but it's not just a hole. Like, it's not just a clean black circle that goes all the way through. There's bone behind on the other side. There's the inside of the skull. So on the nose and the eye sockets, both of them, that's why I have some of these sections separated, because like here, this is where the value is darkest, and this is where it's going to be a darker value, but there's still something there, so it has to be lighter than the hole that goes through. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, same for the nose. So I just want to preface that. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to grab black, and I'm going to grab some brown and mix that in there. And let's just put a little bit of blue. So this is my dark value for my skull. You can see the color difference between that. It's slightly warmer because of the brown, and that's what I want. I want it to be slightly different than the background. So on my right eye socket, I'm going to be putting this dark value in, and it's going to be darkest like in the bottom section. Okay, and then I'm just going to slightly rinse my brush and transition to a lighter value, but still darker for the rest of that socket. Okay. So I'm going to start with that. Now, as this dries, things change as watercolor dries. So if we have to go back to an area and darken it up or finagle it a little bit, that is okay. Don't get angry or stressed out. And there is going to be a little bit of a darker shadow at the top because the brow bone is casting a shadow where it right where it hooks under. Okay. All right, now we're going to move to the other socket. I am not going to do this piece of bone yet because I need it to be more of a medium value and I don't want it to blend with the socket area. So I'm going to wait to do that part. Okay.
Okay.
Now for the other one, the darkest part is going to be in this circle. And I'm still using my round 6. And then I'm just going to use water to paint the rest of the socket. And same thing, there's going to be just a little bit of a shadow cast in there. Okay, we'll let that dry and we're going to move on to the nose. So the parts that are bone that you're just kind of seeing the side of similar to this are right here and right here. So I'm going to avoid that. It is going to be darkest right here and also at the top. Grab a little bit of water and blend in between. Okay, and if you want to kind of outline like these parts so you can remember that they're still inside of the nose but just a different value, you can. Just kind of give yourself a little bit of a edge. We'll go back and we'll paint those later after those areas dry. We have this really dark part here, so I'm going to put that in. Again, I'm going to do water down first because I want it to be really dark. Now, when you do this, you want it to be a thin layer of water. You don't want it to be such a thick layer of water that when you drop color in, it just stays there. So don't have like a pool. Don't have like standing water on your paper. Okay. Make sure that's nice and dark. Okay, there's also this part here. Okay, and then and this is where I wanted to be very specific about the colors I use, because this area is shadowed, but it touches the background, and this area is shadowed. So we want there to be a slight tone of another color so they don't blend into each other. So I'm going to make sure I have a good amount of brown, and then I'm going to paint this in. So then hopefully when they are next to each other, it's clear that one is the skull and the other is the lack of something there, the background. It's going to be darkest right at the edge here. And then as it gets closer to the end, it lightens up. So I'm going to just grab a little bit of water to help lighten that value up. Oh, also you want to make sure your background is dry before you paint by the background, so it doesn't bleed and you lose your lines.
I thought you said so you lose your minds.
No, you don't want that to happen.
You don't want that.
That's bad. Okay, same thing for here. It's going to be darkest right at the edge. And then grab a little bit of water and do a slightly lighter value there. Okay. Okay, you guys are doing good so far. We're doing it. I was really nervous to teach this one, so I'm also like talking myself through it. Yeah, we're fine.
We're fine.
We're fine.
This is easier than you thought.
So far. Okay, now we have some more darker values here. So if I'm going like on the side of my head, this area here and this area here. We have these are cheekbones. I don't want to do those yet. I want to make sure that these dark shadows are dry before I start attempting the cheekbone area. So I'm going to get my dark. Go along that edge, use water, and blend. Now, as I'm blending, I'm paying attention to the color as I add water to it and see if I like that color. And I kind of want to warm it up just a little bit. I liked how it got this like tanny color right here. So you can just take a little bit of that brown. Now, let's say you go to do that and you drop like pure brown in there and then you're like, ooh, that is so brown. I don't want it that brown. Don't stress out. Just lift up the extra color, wipe it on your paper towel, and add a little bit more black to it to gray it up. And then paint over it. And then it's like, not a big deal. Now I'm going to keep transitioning out to the end of the skull, just using water.
Is that barely there color?
Barely there. And I'm just going to darken right here a little bit more. Kind of let that bleed. Okay, good. We're going to move to this part. Now this part right behind the jawbone is fairly dark. It's that same kind of value as the chin. So with this project, as you're painting, you need to pay attention to the values that you laid down, and you need to make sure they relate to each other. So that's why I try and break it up into like darker values, medium values, lighter values. So like if I'm looking at this, so this area compared to this area are very different values. So you need to make sure, depending on what your area, that the values relate to each other. So this is darker and it doesn't transition, like this whole section doesn't transition, it stays that dark value. So it's going to be closer to maybe the chin, and this area right here, it's not going to be like this. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So just like pay attention to your values as you're laying them down. If you start off with your values lighter than mine, then that's what you need to go off. That is now considered your dark value. If you started off with your values darker than mine, that is your dark value. You need to play off of that. Does that make sense? Yes. So you need to look at your own painting and decide for yourself and make sure that your values relate to each other. And blue. Okay, so I'm just going to start filling this in. Okay, and we're just going to leave that. I think we can do like the eye sockets now, like the other side of the cartilage. So you have to make sure that this value, whatever you put in, is lighter than what's going on over here because it's closer to the surface. So even though it's inside of the socket, we see it, it's closer. This little piece of bone is closer to the viewer than the back of the skull. So you need to make sure that is a lighter value. And you'll just start painting and then decide what you need to do. So I put it in. I want to brown it up just a little bit. And honestly, probably what I'm going to do is after I put this in, I'm going to let this dry because right now those values are looking very, very similar. And so when it dries, I'm going to go back in and darken up the back of this eye socket just a little bit so they can be more different from each other. Okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Kenny. Okay, and then I'm going to do that on this. We're going to let that dry and then we'll go back in and work the socket. We don't have it on the other eye socket. Okay, now I'm going to do the jaw bone area since these have dried. So here we have a little dark edge. Oh. And then I'm going to blend out from there. Okay, and then we got to do this part too. So this one is where it's shadowed here. And then I'm just going to use water to blend them. That transitions out. Same thing over here. It's darkest right at the ledge, or right underneath the ledge, which is actually kind of what we're painting. And then it transitions to a lighter value. And again, if you need to go back and work in some of those darker values that you already placed for these things to start to relate and make sense, that's okay. I'm not going to do that yet, but that's why this painting is a little bit more difficult, is because a lot of it is just working back and forth as you paint. So that area is fairly dry now, so I'm just going to do another layer on my first socket. And darken that up just a little bit so the values aren't so similar. But it's still going to be the darkest here at the bottom where it does go, where you can't see. Maybe a little bit more on this nose too. Okay, and I feel like this needs to be darker. Okay, that feels pretty good for now. I think we can move on to step 3, which is more our medium values. Okay, so we have a lot of shading going on. So just bear with me and try and follow along as I just talk you through what I'm doing. So on our reference photo, you can see that we have highlights kind of around the edges where things go in. So on my nose, I have a highlight right here. Around my eye socket, there's a highlight. Now, this is shadowed along the side of the nose, kind of at the brow, on the side bone here. So that's what we're going to paint. You just have to make sure that whatever you're painting now is a lighter value than anything you've painted so far. Except for this area. That's okay. So that's too gray, so I'm going to grab a little bit more brown. And I'm just going to start. And they can run into each other. But I'm going to be avoiding the parts that are highlighted. Okay. And then this kind of continues around the side bone. And you can see I'm not, on some of the areas, I'm kind of just following my reference here and seeing, like on the side thing, that shadow does go all the way to the edge, but here I left a little bit of a highlight. So just kind of look at where those highlights are. I tried to outline most of them for you, but I probably missed a couple. There's a little highlight just around that nose. So just leave a thin white line. Okay. Same thing. This one goes all the way to that line, but around the socket there's a little highlight. And this is where you got to make sure your value is lighter than the eye socket. And the reason why it's so important is because like skulls are all about form, but you want it to be really dimensional. It can easily flatten if your values even out. So that's why it's really important to pay attention to the degree of values that you have going on, because that's what's actually going to create the form in this skull. So like if this is a good example, this eye socket needs to be darker than right here, because this bone, this cheekbone right here, it's sticking out. We see it. This eye socket goes in. So in order for that not to seem like the same plane, we got to make sure that eye socket is darker than the cheekbone, because it's farther away from our viewer than the cheekbone. And these same rules are the same for anything that you're painting with form, but sometimes it's not as imperative. And even some skulls, you can, like, if you want a more illustrative approach, you don't have to go like so into like the details of the different values, because like basic shapes can also communicate what you have going on. But I just want to show you what I pay attention to when I'm really trying to communicate the shape of something and the form, and it's all about value. And I feel like there needs to be another layer right here on the side of the nose. Okay, and then on the brow here, medium value. And it's a little bit darker right on that brow edge. That. Here we have a value kind of going on that I outlined at the top. Here we have like a little, I don't know, indent. I'm just believing, I can't feel that in my head, but I'm sure it's there if it was on a skull that I was looking at. So
If you'd been hit by a golf club, you'd have that indent.
Wouldn't that be so funny if it was just like the part of the skull that I happened to be referencing had this like unique thing and like nobody else has that? They're like, why are you? They're like, I'm feeling my head. It seems.
Actually, now that I think I have it.
You have a little dent right there?
Yeah. Yeah, because I have the temple and then the what on the skull, that top part right next to the other dark part,
Yeah.
and there's that little dent.
Well,
Perfect.
feel around your own head if you have a
But
kid.
I've hit my head a few times. So.
You have. Okay, there's just going to be an extra little shadow right here, right at that ridge. And then I don't want this to be like a coloring book where they're blocky. So I'm just going to take water and just transition some of this out. So I am leaving some white spots, but I'm really just trying to smooth that transition and let that kind of even out. I did my outline a little bit dark so you guys can see what I'm doing. Try and make yours as light as possible. And then the back here has a little bit. Okay. Okay, we're gonna keep on going. So this actually continues up here. Oh, do you know why this is so complicated? Have you ever looked in an ear and tried, like for me, ears are super complicated because there's a bunch of different planes going on, and there are little like tube-like things that like are super strong in some areas and then flatten out in other areas. That is what this skull reminds me of. So like
all those angles.
Yeah, so it's like all of the different surfaces that some stick out and then some receive and then even out. That is the same thing that's going on here. So like, look at your ear. But like if you look inside of an ear to see what's going on, it's complicated.
No matter how fast I turn, I can't.
I'm like,
I can't
maybe
catch
get
my
a mirror,
ear.
maybe get like 2 mirrors or something. I don't know how you look at it. I'm trying to help you.
If you have a GoPro, you can stream from your GoPro. Just go spend the extra $300, and you can do it.
What if I was like, I wanted to paint this skull, and she kept on telling me just to go look at my ear. It had nothing to do
I ended
with
up in the mirror
skull.
contemplating myself.
I've decided she is crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
It makes me think of my sister, Sarah. She saw someone with a chain piercing from the nose to the ear, and she's like, that has to hurt if they move too fast.
Oh, yeah.
Because she thought that they were like, that one is not attached to the same part of their head. So she thought that if they turn, one's going to go in the opposite direction. She's like, I don't understand how that works.
She's
She
like,
couldn't
they
figure it out.
cannot turn their
They can't
head.
turn their head at all. And
You're
if they
like,
do,
no,
it's
they
going to
just-
hurt. Yeah, it wasn't like that. It was more like,
The ear doesn't go this way when
I
the
know,
head
I don't know.
turns.
She said things like that before. Like the
That's funny.
Teletubbies. That's funny. They have televisions on their tummies. Teletubbies.
Got it. Okay. Now I'm looking at this, and I left a white rim around this socket, but it's too wide. So I need to thin it out a little bit more. So you want to leave highlights, but you don't want them to like be so thick they become distracting. I don't know another way to say that. There's a slight shadow over here. I'm going to do another layer right on this brow bone.
You want them thick. CK.
What? Yes, that's it, Keenan. Okay. So the top of our skull is looking pretty good. We've been kind of ignoring this area back down here. So I'm going to work this back jaw and head, and then we'll go into the teeth. Okay. So I'm actually just going to pull color from this shadowed area that I already painted and do the back of the skull here. I'm going to actually add a little bit of brown to that because that color is fairly similar to the background, and I just want to like differentiate it a little bit more. Those kind of touch there. Okay. Actually, I think this goes this way. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now this part here, the back of this jawbone, it needs to be a darker value. So this is a medium value. It has to be lighter than the darker ones around here, but it's lighter, let me start over.
Okay.
It needs to be lighter than these darker values, but it needs to be darker than these values, okay? Say yes.
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 Understood.
You guys are doing great. Now I left, there's a little bit of a highlight there, so I'm going to avoid that. Needs to be a little bit darker. Yep, so far so good. I keep on accidentally wiping my paintbrush on the reference photo. Sorry. Okay, and then just continue this towards the edge here. Leaving a little highlight right there and right there. Okay.
Things coming to life.
It is. Isn't it exciting? I love it when you're starting to put in the different values, because I feel like that's when it becomes three-dimensional. So it's like you literally see it start to form, and it's so exciting because you're like, yes.
Yes.
I'm a creator of three-dimensional things on two-dimensional paper.
That should be a ringtone. Yes.
Yes. Okay, and I'm just going to redefine this shadow here. It kind of got blended out a little bit, and I want to make sure that that is a little bit more sharper. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm avoiding the jaw, and we need to tackle the jaw. And so like, you'll see that as we get towards the end, I'm just gonna be scanning my paper and working all of it. But whenever you're painting anything or drawing anything, you want to bring your painting up simultaneously. You don't want to like do this area so detailed without touching the bottom, because then you have the potential of having two separate paintings that don't relate to each other. So that's why I like to start an area, work on it, I'll work on another area, work on another area, and then I'll like do the finishing parts across the entire thing at the same time, because you want to build it up together. Because what you do up here is going to inform what you do down there. Did I say that enough?
Yes.
You need to. Your painting is going to inform you as you go. Okay, so I got a lot of lines going down here, so let me just take a second to figure out what is what. This is a highlight here, and it looks like this is a dark shadow, so I'm just going to put that in quickly. It's underneath the teeth. So we're on the jawbone, and this area is underneath the teeth. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put that in. So that's going to be the darker value. And then I'm going to use water to spread it. It's going to go all the way to the shadow underneath on this side. And then over here, it's a little bit lighter. And that's going to connect to this. So, okay, now this is another thing where I just painted something, and I want to be clear. If you see in my reference photo, this area is clearly a different value than this area and this area. Now looking at this, these seem very similar to me in value. So I'm going to wait for that to dry, and then I'll go back in and darken this one a little bit, okay? You might not need that on yours. Yours could be three completely separate until they're on three different planes and angles. Then don't do that. So just kind of look at your painting and see what you need to do for yours. You're doing great, guys. We're doing this. It's turning out good. I think. Does it look good? Yeah.
I also think it looks very good.
I have to like step back from it because sometimes you're so close you can't actually see it. So you gotta like take a step back.
Yeah, whenever I teach people, I say you should take a step back.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Good.
But
You
I don't
should.
teach that often, so
Okay.
I kind of said it as a joke. But then I realized I actually have said that.
Yeah, because you actually have taught people like at
Yeah.
the Tulip Festival.
Yeah,
And
the
that's why I was
tulips.
like, did you actually say that? Because
I
I
did.
know that you've taught people.
And at our live, I told them to look at it the next morning. And they said
Good.
that the next morning when I saw them again,
Yeah.
they said that they did and they were
And it
impressed with
worked?
them again. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Just a restful eye. That's all they need.
That really is important.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to switch to my round 2 because I am going to do the little shadows that are in between my teeth.
Usually it's food.
Yep. So I'm going to start by doing a really dark value kind of as it. And this, okay, I would like to tell you guys a little something. This is where when people paint people, it throws them off because when you think of teeth, you think they're white. And I am sorry to tell you that that is not the case. And you can tell by just putting a white piece of paper next to your teeth in the mirror. And 1, you'll probably be grossed out. And then 2, you'll realize that even though your brain tells you something is white, it's not actually white. So we have a highlight at the top of the tooth where the light is hitting it. So that's why that is left white. And then as it gets down into the actual tooth, there's color there. There's shading. And I actually just painted a dog portrait with somebody, and I had to tell them the same thing. You could see a little bit of the dog's tooth in the smile. And I had to say, like, I know you want to leave that white, but if you just leave it white, it actually is distracting because that is the white of the paper that's too white. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. You have to look at the value of the tooth. And that's what we're doing here. These are medium value teeth with the highlight at the top.
This painting of a skeleton has straighter teeth than me, and it makes me a little jealous.
You know what, me too, and I had braces. And I still got a little crooked thing going on. Michael, you guys don't know my husband Michael, but Keenan does. He has straight teeth, never had braces. I know, he has
great
amazing teeth. Naturally that way.
That's kind of gross.
My teeth were jacked
Upsetting.
up.
Yeah. Well, I
Like
don't
this
know that
is a
about
huge
you.
improvement than what was going on before. And I'm sure, I think my oldest daughter, Ella, got Michael's teeth. Luna, I think, has my teeth. Poor little thing. She's going to have to get braces.
I think we just have to accept that Luna is you.
Do you know what's so funny? I posted in my Instagram stories. We went apple picking over the weekend, and she was making a face like this, holding an apple, and I posted it. And I got like 30 direct messages of being like, she is your twin. It was so funny.
That's hilarious.
I'll have to show you that picture a little bit later. Okay, now when it gets to like the back of the teeth at the jaw, they just kind of even out. And yeah, so you don't have to go like too crazy about the details. I should have left a highlight on this back one, but I didn't and can't put it in now. So we're moving on and pretending like it doesn't matter. If you have bleed proof white, you could go back in and put that in there. Okay. Now these bottom teeth, they're not as separated as our top teeth. There's kind of an overbite on the skeleton, so there's going to be, the teeth are going to be darker because they're slightly behind the front teeth. So I'm just going to go in with a medium to dark value here. And I'm going to leave a little line in between those teeth and like the jaw. And this kind of evens out back here. I'm leaving little hints of highlights just to show a little bit of teeth separation kind of on the side here, but not as detailed as that top layer of teeth. And it needs to be shadowed a little bit more because these values are the same, and we want to make sure that it's clear that there is an overbite going on. That's essentially what we're showing. We're like, no, these teeth are jacked.
He's been punched in the jaw a couple times.
No, he actually has pretty good teeth. Everybody has an overbite, I feel.
I think so.
I mean, like, I've seen smiles, like, on dental ads where they're not an overbite. I just don't think those are realistic teeth standards.
Aside from slobbering my fingers just now, I'm pretty sure I have a little bit of an overbite.
I have an overbite when I smile for sure. I think it only happens in ads where you don't have an overbite.
They're fake people.
It's unrealistic beauty standards is what it is.
That is
the
what it
media
is.
telling us what.
It's the media controlling us.
Okay. So we're going to come back to our teeth, but we're going to let that dry and just see what happens. And then here, like right in between the nose and the teeth, we just have these kind of sections. And it's interesting because if you look at your gums, they kind of follow this shape. And so I feel like the gums have this shape because they're just molded to the bone that's underneath. Is that a thing? I don't know. Did I just make that up? Yes. Are you looking at your gums?
Yes.
You see how they kind of like round?
Yeah.
So like we have to show that it's like, meh, 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 you know?
Man.
The things you don't notice until you stop and look at them, you know what I mean?
Yes. I'm going to delete that picture. I think.
Do you know what it kind of reminds me of is like, okay, have you ever watched like Hoarders or something?
Yes.
And then they zero in on like the corners of places and they're super dirty. But then you think like, I bet you if somebody took a video camera and did the same thing at my house, I'm sure they could find like a dirty corner somewhere. And it's like when you're just sitting there and then you start to pay attention to the small details that you're like, oh my gosh, where is a mop?
Mm-hmm.
I need to clean my floor right now.
One thing that always gets me are windowsills.
Yes.
I don't know why, but if a windowsill's dirty, it's so easy to see it.
It's so easy to see it, but our brain, like unless we're looking for it, we don't pay attention to it.
Yes.
That is true for so many things.
It's disgusting.
You guys look at your windowsill. See if they need a good. I'm sure mine do. I probably have 1,000 dead flies
I
on
have
my
several
windowsills.
things in my house that need to be cleaned.
Let's not get. You know what? This isn't about me.
This is about the skull. We
I
need
don't
to
need
focus.
to tell you about.
I don't need to clean my house.
Look at your
I'm
ear.
adult.
Look at your skull.
Yeah.
Focus on that.
Feel for the dents that you're not sure if you have in that.
Okay, so I did my teeth, I did my gums, and now I'm just gonna kind of like blend them out a little bit. So like this shadowy area here, I'm gonna move this down a little bit because we don't want it to seem like too separated, too chunky. And that's what we tend to do when we have outlines, okay? So it's not like you guys are wrong or bad. Just don't like mess it up pretty much is what I'm saying. Like get in there and get it a little bit messy. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna leave that for a second, let that dry, move to another area. And I'm just gonna check my values in different places and kind of like check myself. So like here on the top of the nose, this should be a slightly lighter value than on the side of the nose because it's sticking out. So I'm actually going to take my damp brush and just lift, because I want that to be lighter. Okay, and this I'll blend, and then looking at like this jawbone here, there's actually a stronger shadow here, so I'm gonna do another layer. So take this time to look through your values and see how they relate to each other and see where you need to do another layer or what. I feel like I need another layer back here. All the way to the edge. And also here. Oh, that's too brown. Here. Okay. This kind of actually evens out. Smooths out, I should say. A little bit more shadow just in this brow. And this needs to be darkened right here. So especially rounded right at that curve. Okay. That looks good. And actually, I'm going to do one more swoop inside my nose. It was sticking too close to the values that were around it, and I want to be totally clear. This is going on inside the skull. This is going on outside the skull. Okay. And actually, you can cut this out, but I'm just going to, okay. So I think the only part that's really bothering me now, because I'm not totally clear what's going on, is the teeth. So we gotta go back in and work that out. Also, I think how this is lined up here on the outline, I almost feel like the teeth are sticking out at an angle. When I looked at it from far away, it made me feel like the bottom teeth are sticking out more than they should. I need to recede them more. So to push something back more, you make it a darker value.
They look fused together.
Yeah, they do. So I need to go in and kind of define that. So I'm actually going to move this line of the jaw out a little bit more. Okay. And, oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. Okay. I think it's because I needed to leave one lighter value right here to show that this jaw is sticking out. The top part of the teeth are sticking out. And on top of the bottom teeth. I think that's what I did wrong. So I'm just gonna lighten up right here at that edge, and then I'll go back in and clean that up after it dries. Okay, so I'm gonna go in with my round 2. I'm gonna grab a dark value, and then so I'm going to pretend there's like black space in between the front layer of teeth and the bottom, and then I'm going to go in and kind of put, similar to what I did on the top layer, just little shadows of where the teeth are separated a little bit, because they look like one unit and I need to separate them just a bit. And teeth are wonky and weird, and everyone's teeth are different, so like don't be like every, you know, quarter of an inch, put a different tooth. That's not how it is. Okay.
Now I'm wondering how big or small my teeth are in inches.
I don't know.
Teeth.
Teeth. Okay, And then I'm going to blend a lot of this out. And you also want to make sure that the white line that you're leaving between your teeth and your jawbone on that bottom little tier is not too wide. This needs to be darker because it's receding back around into the skull.
In the spirit of Halloween and costumes,
Yeah.
I feel like this skull should have a mullet.
You just add
Just draw a
like a
mullet.
glorious gold
Yes.
mullet or something. Okay, so I feel like my bottom teeth are pushed back a little bit more. I did a little bit of like value transitions to show that they're not just totally flat and merged together. There is a little bit of separation. And then I need to redefine what's going on here. So here's the edge of my skull. And then I need to put the gums in over here. Yeah, that feels much better. Okay, this needs to darken up a bit because it's turning back away from us into the shadowy area. So that's going to be a darker value. Okay, and then I'm actually going to take a little bit of black, and just on some of these sockets, there will be, you don't want to like just take a thick black line and outline everything because that will flatten it, but right on the ledge, there are going to be some strong shadowed areas. And here, like, there's like a little separation of the bone and like a little line. Here we have like little cracks going through. So you don't want to do these details until you feel good about the values that you have going on here. I feel pretty good about my value area right here, so I'm just going to go in with my round 2 and just very lightly do those little like weird, did he get hit in the head here? I don't know. Sure, maybe they're on everybody, I don't know. I don't know enough about skulls. I'm sorry. I wish I did. Okay, here I need to define this edge a little bit more. Okay, boom. This I'm still not happy with, so I'm gonna do another layer. Okay. This needs to be darker down here. Okay. This edge needs to be defined a little bit more. There's a little line here in between the sockets. This ledge needs to be darker here at the brow. If I'm going too fast, I'm very sorry. You can always pause the video. I'm going to re-darken this just a little bit. Okay, now I'm just kind of looking over all of it and just being like, what's sticking out to me? What needs my attention? I think this highlight is just a little too bright, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. Keenan is stretching, so you know we've been painting a long time. think it looks good. Ooh, I'm seeing the top where I did the outline of the actual bone is kind of bumpy. You can go ahead and smooth that out. So if you just weren't careful, like really super paying attention to it when you were doing the background, you could have some weird lumps. So I'm just going to kind of smooth out some of these lumps a little bit. Just a little.
I mean, if his skull's got a crack like that on the side.
Maybe his skull is lumpy. I think we're good. I think this is it. You guys, good job. Please tell me how this went for you. This will be really helpful for me to decide if I should start doing kind of more intermediate to advanced paintings, specifically with like portraiture and people and things like that. So you guys are awesome. I cannot wait to see what you have come up with, so tag us in it. We're on Instagram at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. If you are part of our Facebook group, we have one separate from our business page called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's just a place for you guys to share your art. That's the point of it. So post it in there. You do have to request to be a part of it, so it's a private group, but I would say worth it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good, encouraging space. So go there, check out what other people are doing, share what you're doing. That's how we learn, is by looking and seeing what other people are doing. So do that. Good luck with this. You guys are awesome. And that's all I got to say. Yeah. Oh, if you need any of these supplies, you can get them at letsmakeart.com. So this, again, was a bonus kit. If you are a subscriber to our box, it was not included. That's what I mean by bonus. Yeah. So we use different colors that are in the box. It's just a way for us to do fun extra projects using whatever colors I want, which is easier for me, and have fun with it. So here's a little extra tutorial for you. I hope you enjoyed it, and that's it. Bye.